is you need that power. So that's what load following means. Robust, you're not going to have to go out and fix the bearings, and if something goes wrong with it. So something that's going to be really going to last, that would be nice too. Scalable, you can make it tiny, you can make it huge. That's a nice attribute as well. Portable, put it in your wireless, you can put it in your car. That's a nice attribute. In fact, a lot of these free energy devices of the exotic sort are portable. And by the way, my little key, you'll see this slide quite a few times as we go through the top 10. After each of the items, we'll show this slide and we'll put in bold the attribute which that particular device has as a strength. And in italics, that means it's kind of a weak point. We'll get down there in a second on this one. Materials are sustainable. Sometimes the things that go into the component, for example, a solar panel, even though that's free energy, you're harnessing the sun's energy, sometimes the footprint required to make the silicon and to, the whole process is actually quite non-sustainable to a certain extent. You have to weigh that in. Practical, you can make you can hook a wire up to a tree and get a couple of watts of electricity. You might be able to charge your a pocket calculator with that, but you can't carry it around with you. So that's not a practical energy device. You can get energy from rocks, potatoes. You can make little batteries out of potatoes, but it's not practical because for the free energy device needs to be something that's going to be useful. And then the reason I put this strong team in italics at the bottom as a weak point for free energy devices, and this is actually the appeal that I want to make to this particular audience. Very often, in fact, I think my next slide, no, not yet. Very often in the free energy world, people tend to get really exotic. You think outside the box. You tend to be somewhat of a loner. As a kid, you really didn't fit in, so you don't develop the social skills, and you tend to not really fit in. And so these inventors not only think outside the box, but they act outside the box, and it's hard to get a business relationship with these guys. If you don't look at them exactly the right way, they get the wrong impression, and then they're getting upset with you, and then they want to go talk to the next person. And it can really be really difficult. They become their own worst enemies. In fact, we could have a presentation sometime might be the top 10 most own worst enemy inventors who have shot themselves in their own foot. And that actually would be the case with many of the technologies you hear about. That's why they don't make it to market, not because the men in black show up and threaten them with a bazooka, but because they can't get along with the people that want to help them. I find that is the primary obstacle to bringing new technologies forward. And that's why an audience like this that is already outside the box in other areas, and maybe some of you have some extra money to throw around, you have the understanding, you know how to relate to these people because you're outside the box too. Most people with lots of money are not really outside the box, and so they don't understand the language and the mentality and the thinking of these guys who just want to help the planet. They don't want to, or some of them want to, well, anyway. The idea is that strong team is a weak point on exotic technologies, and that is one of the reasons why we haven't, after hundreds of years of some of these things being around, the Tesla technologies, that's why we don't see them in the marketplace yet. It's not because they're not viable, but because of that last point. And I think we're at a time when we're going to overcome that obstacle. We're going to start seeing these technologies finally make it. And the technologies we'll be featuring today are some which, many of them we could see this year. Some of them are already out there, are available. You can actually buy the plans online and put one in your car, for example. And so these are things which are really, they're real, they're here, they're now, they're going to be coming in the next year, 2, 3 years. When people say something's impossible, that's when I start getting interested. The higher the eyebrows go on the college physics professor's eyes, the more I think, oh, this is, if there's a working prototype and it violates the laws of physics, that's when we get really excited, you know, in our news service, Free Energy News. Yeah, we cover solar, wind, geothermal, tide, the typical stuff, but we try and focus in on those exotic things that are really pushing the envelope. It's not perpetual motion. You'll find inventors that think they've invented a perpetual motion machine. If it's working, the energy's coming from somewhere. It's harnessing, whether it's coming from zero-point energy, whether it's the Earth's magnetic field, whether it's the flux between the Earth that's going around the sun and the Earth and the moon, our magnetic bodies. You've got massive flux there. We understand tides. Tides come and go because the moon is a gravitational body. It makes the Earth slosh around as it goes around. As the Earth spins once each day, it sees the moon and the oceans follow the moon. We understand that. Why can't we have a little more imagination and realize these are electromagnetic bodies also? They're not just gravitational. And so you're going to be creating magnetic fluxes. And when have you heard a college professor talking about that? And yet, that could be a potential energy source. And so when we see energy seeming to come from nowhere, doesn't mean it's not coming from somewhere. An Aborigine seeing a radio would think that's magic, that you're getting these voices coming out of this box. But you and I understand the physics of how that works. It's really not mysterious to us. And so when you see perpetual motion, the idea of somebody lifting themselves up with their own bootstraps, that's not what's going on here. We're talking about devices that are harnessing energy freely from the environment, whether it's sun, geothermal, etc., or whether it's electromagnetic over unity, some kind of Tesla principle that is pulling into some field out there. We have the statement on the bottom of our sites, all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. What is yesterday's heresy is today's dogma. And this is one of my favorites. When you're 1 step ahead of the crowd, you're a genius. When you're 2 steps ahead, you're a crackpot. And I can relate to that because that's been my specialty all my adult life, is crackpot. Really looking for those things, the new ways of doing things. One of my earlier websites, the idea of greater things. There's always a better way to do things. And that's one of the things, that's why these technologies don't get the funding and support that they need, is because they're looked at as crackpot. But the problem is there's a lot of things that they're associated with that are really out there, are bogus or are fraudulent, and so there's a lot of noise out there in the midst of that signal. Here's my little axiom. Generally speaking, one's eccentricity is directly proportional to the distance one is outside the box. And Mavericks, because we talked about that earlier, they're outside the mainstream, they don't get the social skills that other people get. You have interpersonal conflicts are the greatest impediment to progress of exotic technologies. And this phenomenon is not just true. You can relate to this. It's not just true of energy. It's true of alternative health. It's true of alternative psychology, of homeschooling. Whenever you get outside the box, you'll find that you start associating and gravitating toward other things. And this phenomenon holds true in all of those. So again, here's our list that we're going to be looking at the ideal technology. We live in an exciting time. The cost of energy of fossil fuels is going up. Of course, recently we had this little dip. Meanwhile, what we're seeing is in renewables, the cost is going down. And we live in a time when these 2 curves are going to be intersecting. Even now, utility-scale solar and wind technologies are on a par with fossil fuel, natural gas prices. There's a plant that's going to be going in online this year or next in California. A solar farm is going to be, I think, 2.75 gigawatts, which is the same output as Hoover Dam, at a price cheaper than Hoover Dam or fossil fuels or natural gas. And this is a solar technology. These huge wind farms that you see are generating electricity at a price comparable to what you can get from other sources.